Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today, I'm going to be doing my predictions for the St Kilda Football Club for the upcoming 2024 AFL season. I'm going to be talking about their starting 23 and who I have predicted will make it. I'm going to be talking about their best and fairest, as well as a couple of other awards, and two finishers top five in it. I'm going to be talking about their ins and outs from the off-season, as well as my grading for it, and then where I have them finishing for 2024. Now, this is going to be a lot longer of a video than all my other season predictions because I am a Saints fan and I'm going to be doing a lot more in-depth talk than the others. And so it's going to be a bit longer. It might be 40 minutes, but it might be an hour. I don't know. I'm going to see what it's going to be like once I finished recording. I did just shave my beard today and I don't think it looks great at the moment. Got to let it grow a little bit. Got to stash at the moment. It's not looking the best, but we move. To talk about first, it's going to be the starting 23. I'm going to start with the fullbacks, which, in my opinion, are going to be Howard to start with. I've got him slightly ahead of Cordy because I still think we played our best last season with Howard there. He is still injury prone, and I don't think that's going to change. I watched the preseason game, and he still was doing it. Didn't do it as much, but it's still preseason. And if you're doing it in a preseason game, clearly hasn't gotten out of your game. And so I think there's still room for improvement in terms of a player for us to where we can hopefully draft a player, or if we've got a couple in the twos that I'll talk about later. Cal Wilkie's the pretty obvious one. It's not going to change. He's going to be here for a few more years, and he's just a all-Australian fullback, one of the probably top three best simply one-on-one lockdown key defenders. He's so difficult to beat. He knows how to handle himself in 1v1 so well because he knows how to use his body. He's able to hold his player without actually holding him. So it looks like it's just a fair 1v1 when both players are holding. And he's also been able to develop his intercepting game in the last couple of years, which has really taken his game to the next level, which is why he's made the All-Australian team. He's also a great leader, and I thought he could have been captain for us, but they've still gone with Steele, but he's quite clearly the vocal leader down back for us. Now, our third player is Josh Battle, and I'm not the biggest fan of his, but that's not taking anything away from how good of a player he is. He was pretty good for us last season, absolutely. He knew when to intercept, but he did struggle at times in terms of holding the mark. He was a bit fumbly as well, and his kicks would sometimes be the wrong option. But when it is the right option, they are beautiful kicks. He can laser them 40 meters out, and he's pretty good. He showed great improvement from what I thought in the preseason game against Essendon. I am recording it after. And I think if he does take that improvement, he's probably going to be a super important player for us in the future. Our lockdown defender is Jimmy Webster. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's been great for us in the last two seasons. He's really not lost too many not games, but 1v1 battles throughout the entire game. He doesn't often get beaten, and he's really good off of a halfback in a role that he might not always play. But if someone like Sinclair has been pushed to the midfield, he can certainly be damaging with his left foot. Then our two halfback roles are Jack Sinclair and Zai Wanganeen-Milera. Sinclair, we know how good he is, probably the number one halfback flanker in the league if you count Dacos as a midfielder. He's just super important for us. Hopefully the mullet hasn't taken away his powers. Let's hope it's just him. But he's just amazing. He'll gather up 800 meters gained without even looking like he's trying. He's developed a great lockdown ability as well, which I think in his first season off halfback he didn't really have. But now he knows how to play the role to the best ability you can possibly make it. And then the other for us is Wanganeen-Milera, who I think is probably top three youngsters in our team. He started off slow. I think it was after round 8 when he really started to get going. Looked like he might have had that second season blues that often happens with second-year players. but it didn't happen. He was able to kick inside 50 awesomely. It's a great ability for him. He knows how to hit targets. There was a game in his first season where he had it about 70 meters out from goal on the pocket, and he hit King lace out 40-meter kick on a lead, and it was just awesome to watch. And when you have that ability to hit a target like that, lace out, such a flat kick with so much power behind it, you're going to be super important to any team you play in. And for me, it's just whether he can take another step in that. And outside of just being consistent for the entire season, whether he plays more up the field, whether he is allowed to do that a bit more and maybe even get a couple more goals throughout the season, which when he does kick them, he is a beautiful kick. Thinking to that Sydney game where he got the 50-meter penalty and he snapped and he had the set shot from about 45 out on the 45-degree angle, and he just slotted it perfectly. So in terms of who I would want to see maybe in the twos get a game for our backline, obviously Cordy could replace Howard at any time. There's very little in between the two. Cordy's probably a bit more of a leader and is less error prone, but I don't think he's got the one-on-one ability as what Howard has, and he's also not as big, so he might struggle against the bigger key forwards. So if Cordy's not available, might be someone like James Van Es, who I'm a huge fan of. He's like 197 centimeters and almost 100 kilos. And I think he's got great potential. He'll eventually probably take that role, maybe in 2 or 3 years. And then another one who's been training back there is Isaac Keeler. And this guy has some stupidly good athleticism. Like, he just moves. Once he takes off, he's a blur. And to do that at his height, it's just stupid. I think he will probably struggle to get games there because I think he's more of that Wilkie position or that battle position. I don't think having 3 key defenders of Keeler, Wilkie, and Battle would make sense. So he might struggle to get games. But if someone like Battle goes down with concussion, he could absolutely come into the team and show a lot of great signs. In terms of lockdown, I think it's Ben Patton and Angus McLennan as the two behind. And at the moment, it's probably Angus McLennan slightly over Patton. I'm a pretty big fan of McLennan. He's got some great hops, and he probably will fit into that Webster role if he either picks up an injury or just when he retires, because McLennan still needs some time to develop. And so I've got a bit of a problem with Ben Patton in this team because he had a great 2020 season, broke his leg in 2021 and missed the entire season. 2022 couldn't find consistency in his game whatsoever, which is understandable. But last season, he was in the twos all season because Jimmy Webster had been so good for us. And he was playing a bit more midfield time as well, which shows he might not necessarily be in our future because he's not going to get in over any of our midfielders. We've also taken a couple more in the draft as well as in the trade period, so he's just been pushed even further down. And so there's probably a chance he might be on the trade table, or I don't know if it's a free agent where he might just leave. In terms of our halfbacks, a lot of them are younger players, but we've got one who performed awesome at the preseason game against Essendon, which is Riley Bonner. And if Sinclair's not fully healthy by the time round 1 rolls around, then he probably will take that role. It allows us to have a left footer and a right footer off halfback. Him and Wanganeen Miller showed some great signs playing together, and he just will fit in that role perfectly alongside Wanganeen Miller and Webster as our small defenders. The others that are young players are someone like Angus Hasty or Ari Schoenmaker. Schoenmaker, from what I've heard from the twos game, showed a lot of great signs with his kicking, but also with his intercepting game, which could be very good for us if someone like Wanganeen Miller needs to move to the wing, and he can fill in that spot as well off half-back. In terms of our wingers, I think it's in a really good spot for us. We've got Mason Wood, who's that taller defensive winger, but also being able to attack and score goals. He had a great start to the season last year, but obviously had the shoulder injury against Essendon, but he played through. But it clearly hampered him, and he wasn't able to be so dominant in the air, especially coming back as sort of that third man and taking intercept marks. He was great at that, and then it just sort of tailed off a little bit. So hopefully he can get back to that. And then the other wing is someone we recruited, which is Liam Henry, and he showed some great signs against Essendon in the preseason game. I'm going to be talking about it quite a bit with some of the plays coming up. And I just think the difference he provides to what we've had in the team over the last couple of seasons is going to be great. He's going to be speedy, he's going to be skillful, and he showed that as well. And I think the damage he can provide as a half-forward winger, rotating with probably Bradley Hill, will be awesome. Then in terms of our forward line, it's going to be King, Memory, and Charman as the three keys I have. King's the obvious one. He'll probably be contending for the Coleman this year if we're still successful. We'll probably need to slightly play a bit faster and not fully defensive. But I think that just sort of happens when you've got an option like King, which we didn't have last year. Tim Membry and Cooper Sharman aren't necessarily the biggest second key forwards, but the way Membry plays, the way he does his double jump, well, not double jump, double-legged jump, and is able to mark it behind his head, it just catches defenders by surprise every time. He's able to be a great pack mark for someone undersized, and his running ability up the ground and to get from wing to wing is super important for us when we're looking for that outlet kick, when we're getting it out of our defensive 50. And then the other one is Cooper Sharman, who's more of the high-flying type rather than lead along the wings. He is a great set shot as well, which I think is super important for us because at times we can struggle with it, with King and Higgins being inaccurate quite often. And I think he'll be able to play as that defensive forward if we need someone like a James Sicily, which he showed last year, or Tom Stewart. And he provides an option for us, which someone like Anthony Caminiti probably wouldn't. And then our smalls are going to be Butler and Higgins. Butler's in question for round one, so I see him maybe not making the team, but it obviously means someone like Darcy Wilson could take his spot, and then someone else comes in like a Paddy Dow. But I think they've got both capabilities of kicking 30 goals plus. Higgins is more of that aerial small forward, similar to like a Lincoln McCarthy. And then Philippu's more of our mid forward. He's able to impact the game as a forward, but against Essendon, he played a lot of midfield time, and he did get caught out a couple times ball watching. But for the most part, he was a bit more in and under. And I think when Crouch comes back, he's going to be able to use his left foot a lot more, which he didn't really do, and be more damaging. In terms of our midfield, so Marshall is the ruckman. That's pretty clear. Great season last year, and I think he'll only get better this season. Second year as the key number one ruckman. I think he only gets better and probably pushes even harder for the All-Australian ruckman position. It'll probably be a battle between him, English, and probably Max Gawn, as he'll be the only real ruckman for Melbourne. But he's great around the ground. He knows when to go back and intercept. He knows when to go forward and kick great goals. Did that against Geelong, and it was probably the best goal of the season for us in terms of crowds, riling the crowd up. And then in terms of our midfield, it's going to be quite interesting. I see a lot of people rotating in there throughout the season, but the main three is probably going to be Jack Steele, Brad Crouch, and Mitch Owens. Steele obviously just needs to get back to his 2022 and 2021 best. He has been injured a little bit, and his shoulder has just been through absolute hell. I think he's had 2 really bad injuries on it, and he's always come back early, which just never helps. So for him, he's also gotten a little bit bigger. He obviously dropped a bit of weight, which we won't be able to say anymore. Well, not say, but see before 2023 to be able to be more of that running system that Ross likes to play. And then it looks like he's gotten a bit more middle between the two, and he'll be able to run at a higher level than what his best was, but he'll still be able to tackle and be more physical than what he was last year, which is probably where he dropped off the most. Then in terms of Brad Crouch, I think he was actually the most underrated player for us last season. He was just very consistent, always had high tackle numbers, always high contested possessions, and he actually started to hit the scoreboard a bit more, which is great. It's a thing that he did need to add to his game, and it showed he can do it. So if we can get that a bit more as well, that's going to be super important. He's just an in and under midfielder, and for that we really need, I think, because I think we're starting to get a bit more outside players. So he's going to be super important. And then the other one is Mitch Owens. We saw how good of a season he had last year as a second year player, and that was more of a key forward and backup ruck. And so for him, if he's shown he's gotten fit, his body's amazing. I love it. And he's probably going to be able to run out games a bit better because he did sort of die down in the back end of them. His impact slowly faded away in some games, I noticed. And so for him, if he's able to be more consistent in games, if he can average 20 possessions a game and kick close to a goal a game, which I think he'll be absolutely able to do, then he'll be one of the best midfielders in the game. In terms of our bench, at the moment, I've got Windhager. He did pick up a hand injury, but it looks like he'll be ready to go for round one, which is great. Obviously did the same thing last year, and that hampered his ability a little bit early on. And he did have to go to half back as well to sort of regain some form because he struggled in the midfield. But I think there's a chance he plays more midfield time. I kind of hope he does because I think he'll be a centerpiece for our future. But at the moment, I think he's more of that seventh defender. If someone like Sinclair's not able to play, he probably comes in. If Bonner's not able to play that role, great. Or if someone like Zach Jones gets injured, he'll probably go to the midfield role, and then Stocker or Bonner comes in as well. Zach Jones, I've got off the bench simply because he provides something different. He's more of that burst midfielder, and he's quite aggressive. And even though with his quad injuries having hampered them, his speed and his acceleration really out of stoppages over the last couple of seasons, I think he's got a concussion at the moment, but if he's able to get over that, I do see him as a really important piece for us this year. And then I've got Darcy Wilson and Brad Hill. They're both going to be switching between that half forward wing role. And I see Wilson probably a bit more of that half forward role because Philippou might play more midfield and that opens up the space for him. He showed a great bit of aerial prowess actually at the preseason game against Essen, which I actually didn't know a lot about him. I didn't think he was going to be a great aerial threat in his career, but he showed he's got some hops and he's just a great runner and a great kick. So that's going to be great. And then Brad Hill, he showed a contested mark actually, which I've never seen him do. So congrats, Brad Hill. He's just an experienced player for us, and I see him being super important in terms of leadership, and he can kick goals for us, again, which as a small forward winger is great. In terms of our substitute, I think it'll be rotated quite often. If Paddy Down needs to come in over Zach Jones, someone like Hunter Clark might be the sub, or it might be Liam Stocker, which I don't think is great because I don't think he's going to be able to play either role. Ben Patton might be the sub, or we could go with someone like Matty Allison, who he's been a bit fumbly at times during the preseason, but I'm quite high on him. I think he moves great and he's got a great body for a wingman. So someone like Mason Wood, once he goes past his career, he might be able to replace him, and is just able to play in all positions. Got drafted more as a key forward and has played more as a winger in the VFL. Now, in terms of our top 5 best and fairest, first I've got Marshall because I think he always polls really well. Finished top 3 last year as the number 1 ruckman for the first time. And then I think he only gets better this year. He'll be more consistent. He might be able to kick more goals as well if we play more of an attacking brand, and he'll get a bit more recognition. I do have him making my All-Australian ruck position. That'll be a bit of a spoiler for my video later. Second, I've got Wangadeen Millera. He can only really get better for me. He was super important for us last year, and that showed in his polls. I think he finished 5th, which as a second-year player is great. It shows the coaches understand his importance and know how good of a player he is. And so for me, I've got him finishing 2nd. Third, I've got Steele. He will get back to his best, I'm assuming, which is why I've got him 3rd. But I don't see him being our best player. I don't think we need him to be our best player anymore. And during 21 and 22, he was quite clearly our best player. And that's not the case anymore. 4th, I've got Sinclair. He might miss a couple games with a calf injury, and that might affect us slightly, which is kind of what I've got predicted to happen. I don't think we need to rush him back with the performance of Riley Bonnet and the improvement of Wanganeen Miller. And then fifth, I've got Owens. He polled, I think, fourth last season for us as a second-year player. The way he plays, it just breathes aggression, and he just goes into packs all the time with no safety and no fear for his life, like at all. And it's great to watch. And I think that does get rewarded by the coaches. In terms of who I've got finishing top 5 for most goals, I think it's King first. I see him challenging for the Coleman, maybe 60, 65 goals. That'd be a great, great result for him. If he can average 2.5, 3 goals a game, then he'll certainly be up there. It's just a bit about accuracy for him as well and staying in the games. He can show up for 5 minutes in a quarter and kick 3, but if he doesn't do anything the rest of the game, it's a bit underwhelming. In second, I've got Cooper Sharman. I see him being as a bit of a deeper forward where Membry's all the way leading up, and then if King isn't able to mark it, I've got Sharman as that leading forward, and I've got him kicking quite a few goals. I think he might kick 40 to 45 throughout the season, as long as he stays healthy. Third, I've got Higgins. I think he's the goal sneak for us. So Butler is more of that pressure forward, and he also might not be playing as much due to his injury. And so I've got Higgins third because I do really like him. And even with his kicking problems at goal, he obviously can't do snaps from 30 out. He'll still finish above Tim Membry because I think he'll just take a step back because he'll want to play a bit more up the ground. He'll want to allow King, he'll want to allow Higgins and Sharman to be able to play one-on-one a bit more. And he kicks great inside 50. He knows how to play with King. He understands King's leads, and he'll be more of that connecting piece rather than that goal-scoring piece. And then fifth, I've got Butler because of the reward he'll get for being that small forward, that pressure forward. He'll get enough when we're running back towards goal. He'll get some over the top, and he'll just kick enough to be able to finish top 5. Now, in terms of who I have finishing top 5 in our most improved, I think first will be Naz Wanganeen Miller. I think he'll probably make a jump to where he at least contends for the All-Australian 44 man. But I just see him finishing, when he does finish second in the best and fairest, which I think very well would happen, he probably is going to be our most improved. I don't think Owens necessarily takes as big as a jump as everyone else sees him. I don't think Philippou does. I think he might struggle a little bit in the midfield, so he might play a bit more forward. So I see him finishing first. In terms of who I've got second, it's Marcus Windhager. I think even with the setback of the hand injury, he'll be playing more midfield time. He won't have the problems of the wrist injury he had last season hampering his ability this season. I think it'll be slightly different. I think it'll be more important early on because he did struggle at times last season. Third, I've got Cooper Sharman. I've got him third because I've got him finishing second in our goal kicking. I think by the end of the season, he'll be better than Tim Membry, and I think he'll be our second best forward. Fourth, I've got King because hopefully he stays healthy. He'll be kicking over 60 goals, and I think that's enough improvement when you go from a forward who struggles to find consistency in this game to being a Coleman level forward. I think that means you've improved enough. And then fifth, I've got Rowan Marshall. I think given that he, in my opinion, he makes the All-Australian 44-man squad finally, I think that's enough of an improvement at least, maybe not in terms of actually how he plays, but in terms of recognition, I think that's an improvement. I'm now going to talk about our off-season and the ins and outs from it and how I rate each trade and each signing we made. So in terms of our draft, which I'll start with, I think we did really well. We got 2 essentially late first-round picks, early second-round picks with the extended first-round draft. Got Darcy Wilson, who I really like. I think he can make a similar impact to what Philippou did for us last season. He showed in the practice game that he's got great aerial ability, which I talked about, with a couple of really nice marks. He's got great speed. He just runs really, really well, which obviously was a big thing that Ross wants with this team. and he's actually a really great kick for what's going to be a first year player. He can use the outside of his foot really well, which I've noticed a little bit. And I think that can be really important for someone who's young and hopefully can develop even his left foot a little bit. And he'll be able to kick on both sides because I do think he's going to be really dangerous for us. And our second first round pick was Lance Collard. It was a bit of a iffy pick at the time, and I still don't think that's going to change. He's got to sign a long-term contract with St Kilda for me to actually believe he's going to stay, because he at times looks disinterested, even if that's how he plays. It's not great to see from a rookie, even though he just moved. In terms of how he plays, it's very pure small forward. He's got great ability in terms of goal sneak. He knows where the goals are and he's going to be able to find them in his career. He also is a great pressure forward. He can run up from behind. He doesn't have the strength to tackle in a regular tackle front on, but from behind he's got great speed to be able to catch up to players. And I think he can become a really good player for us in the future. So that's a great pick if he's able to stay. Our next pick is Angus Hasty, and I think he'll probably be a halfback, flanker, or a winger for us in the future. I don't see him breaking into the midfield, especially not early on. It's a bit of a Sinclair replacement, maybe. I think if Naz even moves up to the wing in the future, he could replace Naz's role. And then our fourth pick was Hugo Garcia. I think he's actually showed a lot of good signs. He's a great tackler, at least from what I've seen in the preseason. He has laid a couple plays out, which is great to see. I think that it's kind of what we need in the forward line, because Butler's more of that pressure, not necessarily tackling and aggression, small forward. So that's great. He also has shown a bit of an ability to play in the midfield. He did a little bit against Essendon in the preseason match, and I thought he was pretty good. And I think at his best, he'll be a Crouch level player, and he'll probably replace Crouch by the time he gets fit and into the team. Now, our last pick was Ari Schoenmaker, who's a halfback flanker, really. He's a bit more solid than Wanganeen Miller, but he's got that height, and he's also got a great kick. He knows how to hit the 45s. He can run through the middle as well, and he showed a bit of intercepting apparently in the twos game, so that's great to see. He does have a bit of off-field problems, and he has had to apparently train with the twos. It's unclear whether that's because he needs to have the extra session in terms of getting his aerobic capacity up, or if that's due to some issues that I won't really talk about. In terms of who we traded in, it's Liam Henry and Paddy Dow as our two. I'm a huge fan of Henry. I think he showed lots of great signs, like I talked about when doing my team preview. The fact that we got him for so little as well is great. I think we've already got our money back for it, because he's just going to be a great player. We don't need to put in all the work to develop him. He's already at that level where he'll be starting consistently for us. And I think as a half forward winger, he'll be able to have a great impact for us. Now, Paddy Dow, I think, is the player we sort of needed in our midfield. If he's able to improve and get a bit better, then that's a bonus, really. But I don't know if he actually makes our team. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to get over the likes of a Zach Jones or a Seb Ross or a Hunter Clark, because I think they're all on a similar level of player caliber at the moment. He obviously has a better potential than most of them. Him and Hunter Clark, you could probably toss up between the two. But I do really like him. He's going to be a speedier inclusion of what like a Crouch might be, I think. And that's quite needed if someone like a Zach Jones goes down. Now, in terms of our pickups that we just took from elsewhere, was Riley Bonner. We took him in the preseason draft, as you can see. And I think he's got great backup potential for Jack Sinclair. We don't need to rush Sinclair back from the injury. He's shown great kicking ability and understanding the game. So it's going to be a perfect like-for-like replacement, even though he's not going to be as good as Sinclair. the role that Sinclair plays just allows for players to excel. Now, the other one was Liam O'Connell, who we took from Ireland. I think he's going to take a long, long time to develop, but it'll be interesting to see where he does fit into the team in the future. Maybe he becomes like a Conor McKenna type, but he does need to get a bit bigger. He needs to understand how the game works and reading the game. He also needs to be a bit more skillful with his foot and understanding the physicality of the game too. In terms of who we got rid of in the offseason, Oscar Adams, we delisted. I think with Keeler being developed as a key back, we didn't need him anymore. And he also had a couple of off-field things. I think he got suspended in his rookie season for drunk driving, maybe. So there was possibly something off-field with him. Jack Billings, we traded away. And I think it was time for him. He wasn't getting games. He was consistently getting injured, and he wasn't impacting the game, even if he was playing. So it was good. We got rid of him because it was time, but it's unfortunate we couldn't get anything of value back. Jack Bytel, we delisted. When we drafted him, I was a huge fan because he had top 10 potential before his back injury in his draft year. But it was unfortunate he just wasn't able to get over any injury hump in his career. He was able to play good football at times in 2021, but that was really it. He never showed a lot of promise outside of that, and he just always got injured when he played. Nick Coffield, we traded away as well. I think it was also time for him. He just couldn't stay healthy, similar to Bytel and Billings. You're going to see a bit of that with Dan McKenzie as well. And I really liked Coffield. I think he would have been the perfect fourth small defender for us. And I was pretty high on him in terms of how he was as a player. He had a great 2020, and he just wasn't able to carry through with that into 2021, and then just couldn't stay healthy the last 2 years. So it probably was time. Leo Connolly, we delisted. He obviously picked up a couple of replacements for him, and he wasn't getting games after 2021. So there was no need to keep him on the list. Jade Gresham, I like the fact that we got rid of him. We got a good pick who we drafted Collard with, and it just wasn't working with him in the end. He's clearly a small forward rather than a midfielder forward, and it was clear we wanted a midfielder forward instead. So I like that we got rid of him. We also got rid of Tom Highmore. And like I said, with the Oscar Adams pick, given the fact that we have put Isaac Keeler as a key defender, it sort of removed his need in the team, as well as drafting Ari Schoenmaker, because in terms of their build, they're not too dissimilar. We got rid of Dan McKenzie, who was another of the injury-riddled players that we just sort of didn't need. Riley Bonner has already made as big of an impact that we need from a player like that. And then we got rid of Jack Perez, who I quite liked. I think in his debut, he showed a nice bit of promise. But with drafting someone like Darcy Wilson and Lance Collard, we don't really need another small forward who won't be getting games. So overall, I do like our off-season. Wasn't as many big moves as I thought we might have made, but I don't mind it. There's no real thing I totally disagree with, and I really liked our draft, and I think that really sets us up for the future. Now, in terms of where I have us finishing for 2024, I think we've actually got one of the widest ranges possible. I think at our absolute best, if everything goes correct and everyone plays up to their best, Steele gets back into form, Dougal Howard doesn't do his 360s, Max King becomes a Coleman caliber full forward, Tim Memory, Cooper Sharman work well as second and third forwards, then I think we have an absolute shot at making the top four, really. We finished sixth last year with a whole crapload of injuries, with a first year coach in a new system with the players, and there wasn't really a lot of flexibility he had. With our team being quite consistent due to the injuries, he only was able to play one sort of brand. He wasn't able to be more flexible with his coaching style. And so I think now, with everyone back with a bit more of his style of a team, we'll be able to be more flexible. And so I think if everything clicks, if we all work together really well, then we probably could finish third or fourth. But a more realistic option for us is probably in the 5 to 8 range. I think we're 80% a chance to make finals. It's probably going to be a home final. I think the most realistic option, but there's a good chance other teams improve just as much, if not more than us, so it could overtake us. But you've also got teams like GWS and Carlton who finished right around us, who just had stupidly good second halves of the season, where if they don't and they fall back to where they played in the first half of the season, then you never know, and we might finish comfortably in the top six. So I think we've got a really wide range. There's also a problem where we might have more injuries, where Max King doesn't break out, and we've just been overhyping him. Where Owens and Wangan Miller stall a little bit because young players can do that. Where Steele doesn't get back to his best and he struggles with injuries again. Where our smalls just can't play lockdowns anymore. Webster gets injured and we have to go with someone like a Ben Patton or Angus McLennan. So I think there's a chance where the lowest we finish is in the 9th to 12th range. I think in my first prediction, I had us finishing 10th, which is simply because I have us slightly stalling and I had other teams getting better, like a Gold Coast and like an Adelaide. But I think in a more realistic option, it is going to be 5 to 8. If I were to do a prediction again, I'd probably have us 6th once again. I think there are a couple teams that might fall down, but there's also probably going to be a couple teams that improve as well. So that's my thoughts on St Kilda. If you have any different, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this type of content, there's going to be a bit more until the season starts, so subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. It will really help grow my channel, and thanks for watching.